So today we're talking about how to read when you have ADHD. And I'm going to share with you 10 simple but powerful tips that are going to help you or your child with ADHD to make reading so much easier. Hi, my name is Jamie Vasilian, the Hypnosis for ADHD specialist, helping you or your child with ADHD learn to manage and even master your uniquely wired brain so you can begin to live the life that I believe you are truly meant to enjoy. So today we're talking about how to read when you have ADHD. And I've written a blog on this. So let's go through that. There's an introduction which talks about how people with ADHD don't necessarily have a learning disorder or a lower IQ. In fact, most people with ADHD tend to be average to even above average in intelligence. So let's go through these 10 simple tips that are going to help you or your child with ADHD learn how to read more effectively and easily. So number one, do what works best for you, or indeed your child, not what's expected of you. So we read in a different way from people that don't have ADHD, and also people amongst people with ADHD, we read in our own ways. So find what works for you or your child. Be like a detective and just find out what works and what doesn't. Number two, read books that interest you. Now that seems kind of obvious, doesn't it? So it's not necessarily, I'm saying the obvious, but it's not necessarily about us. It's the book itself. It may not be that, it just may not be interesting. Although, of course, I'm aware that we do need to read some things that may not be interesting, such as when we're studying, there may be a textbook that we need to read. So keep on listening, because I'm going to share with you some more steps, some more strategies that can help you or your child to read more effectively. Number three, read more than one book at a time. Now, reading one book at a time, kind of multitasking, is something that comes quite naturally to people with ADHD, something that I used to always do, and something that many people even recommend. However, it can work up to an extent for some people, perhaps having a book on leisure and a book to do with your work or study, but there is a bit of a problem here as well. You do need to be careful with this step. So that brings us up to step number 4, train your brain to focus on one thing at a time. Sometimes when we're reading multiple books, we actually get more ADHD. Our attention gets more split. Similarly, work, we might be multitasking and thinking, if I do lots of different things in my business, that I'll stay stimulated and be able to get stuff done. But that can also backfire because our brain gets used to jumping from one thing to another and not being able to focus on one thing and chasing after stimulation, or a kind of a short-term stimulation, but never really completing anything. So we miss out on that progress that we can make and that sense of satisfaction when we achieve and complete something. So, you can read more than one thing at once, but it's also important to learn to focus on one thing at a time. Again, do what works for you. 5, take regular breaks. So when you have ADHD, think of yourself as being more like a sprinter than a marathon runner. And there's something called the Pomodoro technique, which is 20 minutes, 5-minute break, 20 minutes, 5-minute break. That can be varied according to your concentration. And this will just make it easier for you to be able to read. And the trick here is that in that 5-minute break, that you do something completely unrelated to reading. Something physical was really good, or something creative. And you can get apps that help you with the Pomodoro technique. And the other thing that I would recommend is sticking to it like clockwork. To get the benefits from that technique, you do have to stick to it like clockwork. Number 6, move or stand when reading. We don't have to sit down when we read. When we have ADHD, we're more likely to fidget. And research has shown that when we fidget, it actually helps our brain to stay concentrated, which is why, for example, movement and exercise is one of the best things for ADHD. So why not read standing up or pacing? Or you could read an audiobook, which means you could listen to an audiobook even, and go for a walk. 7, avoid distraction. This is really, really important. So we've got to think about the environment. And one of the things that we might want to do is avoid ebooks, because when you're reading off of a screen, like I am now, I'm looking at the screen going through this, but when you're reading off a screen, you're more likely to get distracted by other things that are going on. So if we opt for a good old-fashioned paper book, there are less distractions. Beyond that, we need to control the environment, wearing headphones perhaps, with music, with no words. Some people, on the other hand, with ADHD do better with silence. And so we need to have a look at that. Now, as I'm going through this, there are various other things in the blog that can be helpful, which is why the blog's there. For example, there's a video on Pomodoro technique that I've done. And also here on distraction, I recommend something I've been using called Brain FM, which is functional music designed by neuroscientists for the purpose of focus, learning, reading, and sleep, and all sorts of stuff. And it's really, really cool. And they've had funding for their research on ADHD music for ADHD. So this is really, really good. And I've been using it for about a month now and finding that it's actually very helpful, especially for me, to be able to focus and get work done. So on the app, you can press different settings and you can choose reading on the app or online, and it will play music that is specially designed to help you to focus, to read, and to not be distracted. 8, read aloud, close your eyes, or doodle. That's right. If we read it aloud, it helps us to pay more attention to what we're reading. It's something called dual encoding. We're also hearing the words physically through our ears. It's kind of like coming out of our mouth and then going through our ears again. So we're paying more attention to what we're reading and hearing, and it's sinking in more effectively. And the point of this step, number 8, is, generally speaking, is that do it in your own way. Sometimes, for example, some people with ADHD appear not to be listening when they close their eyes, but in fact, closing your eyes can sometimes help you to listen more effectively. Another thing, like I say, is doodle. You could listen to an audiobook and doodle at the same time, which sometimes helps people with ADHD, with these uniquely wired brains, to be able to process what it is that they're listening to or learning. 9, this is an interesting one, might be a bit surprising, read faster. Now, you might be thinking, well, I'm struggling to read as it is, or my child's struggling to read as it is. But I came across a book called Speed Reading by Tony Buzan. And one of the first recommendations it gave for speed reading was to go back to like when you were younger and start using your finger or a pencil. Now, this is really effective because our eyes are designed to track movement. You see words on a page are stationary. As soon as you start using a pencil or your finger and moving like that, your finger or your pencil becomes like the kinetic driver, so that this is driving your eyes and your brain forward like that. And it makes reading easier. It makes your concentration easier. It helps you to keep going. Now, it wasn't just that tip, but that alone can double your reading speed, just that alone. But I also did some other things that were in the book, a lot of various other techniques, and I got my reading speed from 400 words per minute, and I would keep rereading and not being able to remember what I was reading, which is a common complaint of people with ADHD, and I managed to get it up to 2,400 words per minute at the same level of comprehension. And I actually found it easier at that speed than I did at 400 words per minute. So in other words, it may be that you're struggling with reading, not because you can't read or not because you're apparently unintelligent, but because your brain wants to go faster. This is one of the reasons perhaps why a lot of people with ADHD, when they watch YouTube videos, speed up the video and listen to the voice at a faster speed. So similarly, you can apply the same technique to reading. Now, finally, tip number 10, hypnosis for reading. See, hypnosis can help us to get into what is called the flow state, or the state of accelerated learning, where we find it easy to absorb information. We're in a focused but relaxed state. And hypnosis is a wonderful way to help us to get into that state of mind. And also hypnosis can help us to deal with any fears or anxieties or experiences we've had around learning that have caused us problems or issues in the past. So anyway, if you go onto the blog, there is also a link to my hypnotic goal setting session, where you can literally go on there, answer some questions, and then close your eyes, do hypnosis, and it will help you with whatever your goal is. And of course, you can apply this hypnotherapy track to reading. So I suggest going to do that as well, and that could really help you or your child with ADHD. Anyway, there you go, 10 simple but powerful tips even, that can help you or your child with ADHD improve your reading. And there's also on my website, there's a blog of 10 study strategies for success that you may find helpful. You've been listening to me, Jamie Vasilian, the Hypnosis for ADHD specialist. And if you need any help with reading or anything else, then why not go along to my website and find out more, advantagehypnotherapy.co.uk, and click on any of the red buttons on the website where you can book in for a free consultation with me of normally about 30 to 45 minutes where we can answer any questions that you've got. And yeah, and hopefully I'll look forward to hearing from you in future. Bye for now.